is, again, aging is something that I am trying to spend more time to understand.
Hmm.
I have elderly neighbors in their 80s, 90s, and 105 is the oldest neighbor that I have who's a friend. And so what I'm noticing is people who are elderly don't actually recognize the face that is looking at them in the mirror, which has surprised me because
Mm.
I've noticed, just whenever we're taking pictures, and I see that with myself, I see it with almost everyone who's now, let's say, 60, 70 above, is do you think once we start to really see those, the changes of that time does to us, do you think there's going to be a forever cognitive dissonance, where we will just not know who we are? And then what effect does that have on us pairing up with somebody who, and believing that they're attracted to us when we're not attracted to ourselves?
Well, I'll tell you, Sophia, like my interpretation of what you shared is like how important it is that we are attracted to ourselves, that we love ourselves, that we're comfortable with ourselves, because that's the beginning of all other forms of love.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't love ourselves, it's impossible to love another person. At the same time, sometimes loving others is how we learn to love ourselves. Like I will tell you, I grew up not loving myself. I grew up with like physical abuse from a stepfather and feeling like, hey, if this guy comes into my home who's not my father and beats me up and sleeps with my mother, then I must not be much of a person. And so I had a lot of challenges like that, and even just fitting in because I felt like ostracized in many ways because other kids picked up on my lack of self-esteem. And one of the things I learned was, I went to Kenya, as you know, and at first I went there as a Peace Corps volunteer, which is kind of like your British, volunteer services overseas, BSO. Anyway, I went as a volunteer for 2 years, and then I started an NGO and went back for the next 10 years, repeatedly every year. And what I learned was by learning to love others, I really sort of realized this is the beauty of people by experiencing rural Kenya and how people would like come together and people were so empathetic. Like I'd be walking down the street and someone would say, "Hey, you're not feeling well? You look a little different than you did yesterday," and things that I hadn't experienced that with people attuning to me so much.
Mm-hmm.
And in a really tight community like that, growing up in Washington D.C., it was not like that for me. And so as I learned to love others, I also learned to love myself because I realized like, well, I guess I have something worthy within myself to give, and that's why I've been accepted here in this community.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed everything. And I think this is the problem. A lot of us, certainly over 40, and also younger too, we go, well, why am I single on Valentine's Day? Like why haven't I found, if I'm so wonderful, why haven't I found the right person? And
Mm-hmm.
so again, it's this kind of like victimization, like why am I not loved?
Mm-hmm.
What we don't realize is that we are loved. If you actually we hold our hands over our eyes and we cry about how dark it is.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of opening our taking our hands off our eyes, opening our eyes and going, wow, there is love all around me.
Mm-hmm.
And through family, through friends, through colleagues, and I'm just not acknowledging it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not recognizing it. I'm insisting that love show up on my doorstep in the form I want it in, and I'm not recognizing the love that is here around me every single day. And once we can make that leap and recognize the love that surrounds us, then we have something to give, and then we go toward relationships in a different way, and we won't accept anything other than love. So I often tell people, you in your intimate part of your life, you only speak to one person, but you speak through a lot of other people to that person. So for example, if you're on a date sitting across the table from someone,
Mm-hmm.
don't speak to that person, speak through that person to your life partner, and ask that life partner, is this you?
Mm-hmm.
Is this not you? What should I be doing here?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very interesting way of communicating because we're almost always just talking to an image or a label that we attach to someone. So, for example, just in what you've disclosed to me, in my head, like if I saw you, I would think, okay, he looks like Bruce Springsteen. He's probably had he was probably the high school good-looking guy, and that's what your things are that you've had to overcome. That would have been my assumption. I wouldn't think, that you've had a tough time with a stepfather, and you had all these issues that come from that trauma. So it's just interesting because if we met on a dating app, that's what you would think is, okay, he's American. And we just come up with all these labels that are generated from stuff we've watched, stuff we've been told, stuff we've read.